going to start the program now, and I'd like to introduce you to Jerry Leone. He is the chairman of the Malden City Republican Committee, and without him, we wouldn't be having this affair today. Just a few words about Jerry. He's a lifelong resident of Malden. He was in the Air Force Reserve. He also was a former member of the Malden School Committee, the only Republican on the Malden School Committee. And now he's chairman of the Malden Republican City Committee in Malden, and he's going to do a great job because there's a lot of people here that respect him for what he does for the people of Malden. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the new chairman of the Malden Republican City Committee, Mr. Jerry Leone.
Thank you all for coming. I do have to apologize because this is the first Teddy Roosevelt cookout, and we were supposed to have a cutout of Teddy Roosevelt to take pictures of, and a member of my family accidentally threw it out. I found out about it this morning. And so that's how my day started off. And then we were supposed to be outside, and the rain came, so I moved everybody in. So I have a few thank yous, obviously everyone for attending. The owners of Pearl Street and the management and the servers, obviously. Aside from me, if you're a veteran, please raise your hand. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank my team. The vice chairperson, Kathleen Young, will be here later on. She's coming from New Hampshire, so she'll be here at 6. We have the secretary of the committee, Joseph Panciotti. We have our new treasurer, Joe Griffin, and our communications director, Francis Matuccio, had surgery, so he couldn't make it at the last minute. So I'd like to bounce around. I have someone speaking on behalf of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, this used to be, as you can see, an old train station built in 1891. Teddy Roosevelt was 33 years old at the time. I don't think that's before he was the Secretary of the Navy. I think Henry could verify that, but I'd like to introduce a friend of mine. He's the owner and CEO of Marston Digital Solutions, Brad Marston.
Chairman, thank you very much. I wish you had told me that this was the Teddy Roosevelt cookout. My comments might have been more positive. And when Jerry asked me to talk about Teddy Roosevelt, I went, wow, at a Republican City Committee. Then I went, yeah, but that's like 7 or 10 minutes that I don't have to talk about the current presidential election or COVID-19, so what the hell, I'm in. Also being one of the warm-up acts for Kevin O'Connor probably isn't a bad way to spend an afternoon. Teddy Roosevelt was a great orator, adventurer, leader, and by his exploits in Cuba in the Spanish-American War, war hero. He was a prolific author and a voluminous reader, probably, in addition to Thomas Jefferson, the most highly read president. He often read 2 or 3 books in a single day. He's probably won the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize, back when it actually meant something for a president to win a Nobel Peace Prize, for negotiating the end of the Japanese-Russian War in 1905. He's probably best known as a conservationist. He set aside 5 times as much land as all the predecessors combined. A total of 235 million acres, 360,000 square miles, 2.5 times the size of Montana. He was the first president to entertain a black man in the White House when he invited Booker T. Washington, a fellow Freemason, for dinner. He thought it was a great success, but the uproar was such that no further invitations to Mr. Washington were forthcoming, at least for dinner. When they met at the White House, it would be at a business meeting, 10 a.m. He also appointed the first Jewish cabinet member, Oscar Strauss, for the newly formed Department of Labor and Commerce. He had complicated views on race, or as some of our millennial social justice warriors might say, they were problematic. Roosevelt wrote to a friend that regarding the difficult issue of race relations, quote, "I have not been able to think of any solution of the terrible problem offered by the presence of the Negro on this continent. But of one thing I am sure, and that is that inasmuch as he is here, we cannot kill him and we cannot drive him off. The only wise, honorable, and Christian thing to do is to treat each black man and each white man strictly on his merits as a man, giving him no more and no less than he shows himself worthy to have." He showed that Republican trait of dealing with people on individual merit rather than seeing them as part of a group. He had a massive ego, which ultimately led him to challenge Taft for the Republican nomination in 2012. Failing that, he left the party and started the Progressive Party, or better known as the Bull Moose Party, which unfortunately paved the way for Woodrow Wilson. His daughter is quoted as saying after his death, "My father wanted to be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the child at every christening." Now, why was he so popular? As a conservative, the only answer I can come up with is, beats the hell out of me. But he was loved by the press, and he loved the press. There was no Twitter back then, but as governor of New York, he would hold at least 2 press briefings or press conferences a day, in addition to individual interviews with favored reporters. And that was how he kept in touch with his middle-class base of voters. In fact, when he was president, he looked out the window and he saw the press corps huddled in the rain, and he invited them in, gave them a room, and that's what led to the White House press room and daily briefings. He also made his bones, starting when he was first elected to New York Assembly, as someone rooting out corruption and bribery. He felt that special interests, and you've got to remember back then, corporations and especially these trusts that owned the railroads, etc., were huge, and they all owned politicians. As he was on the Civil Service Commission, and he wanted to root out the spoils system, and he transformed dozens and dozens of positions that had been based on political patronage to positions based on merit. As governor of New York, he talked about higher taxes and greater business regulations, which actually put him at odds with the party boss at the time, Tom Platt, who suggested he become McKinley's running mate as vice president, which at the time was an even more powerless position than it is now. Roosevelt had no interest, but Platt started an editorial newspaper campaign, finagled his way, and got McKinley to add him to the ticket. Said, "Great, I'm done with him. He's in this backwater." Didn't work out really well, since 6 months later, or 6 months after being inaugurated, McKinley was assassinated, and now Roosevelt became president. He brought 44 antitrust suits under the had been moribund Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. To give you an idea, he brought 44. His 3 predecessors combined had used it 18 times. He broke up the largest railroad trust, the Northern Securities Company, regulated and finally sued Standard Oil. And from that lawsuit, in 1912, after he left office, it led to the breakup of Standard Oil. Now, one can argue the merits of hyper-regulations, going after big corporations, etc. But you've got to remember, at the time, we didn't have the alphabet soup of regulatory agencies that we have today. But in short, Roosevelt paved the way for the administrative state that we have today. Through his new nationalism, he sought social justice by extending the powers of the central government, which Roosevelt believed to be the steward of the public welfare. He believed that in his day, many of the corporate magnates and powerful trust titans amassed their wealth by ill-gotten gains. And so naturally, what follows suit? The inheritance tax and a progressive income tax. He proposed the creation of the United States Department of Commerce and Labor, which would include the Bureau of Corporations, which later became the Federal Trade Commission. The Hepburn Act of 1906, and unfortunately it wasn't authorized the Interstate Commerce Committee to set maximum railroad rates, and then extended the agency's authority to set prices on bridge tolls, terminals, ferries, sleeping cars, and oil pipelines. He believed in government protection of human welfare and property rights, but he also argued that human welfare were superior to individual property rights. He insisted that only a powerful federal government could regulate the economy and guarantee justice. I'll leave you with these quotes. I stand for the square deal. But when I say that I'm for the square deal, I mean not merely that I stand for fair play under the present rules of the game, but that I stand for having those rules changed so as to work for a more substantial equality. Teddy Roosevelt or AOC? It's necessary to give the national government complete power over the organization and capitalization of all businesses, all business concerns engaged in interstate commerce. I'm not sure Bernie Sanders or Liz Warren could say it any better themselves. So he at once was a Republican. He certainly had his good attributes. He moved to the dark side, and he brought big government along with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. All right, before we get into the three speakers of the night, I want to hand out some well-deserved awards. Lately, the past few months, we've seen the media just try to cripple the police departments all over the U.S. And we know that we can't judge a few police officers and say every cop is bad, because that's not true. So this is not an endorsement from the Republican Party, but I wanted the Malden Police Department to know that there's people who care, and there's a committee out there that cares for them. And accepting the award on behalf of the Malden Police Department is the president. The next award is a person who's done a lot for the community of Malden. A friend, he's a former 3-term counselor at large, business owner, and currently the commissioner, I don't know if this is commissioner of the Mass Commission of the Blind. Past chairman of the Malden Republican City Committee, Mr. David D'Arcangelo.
Al, you want to do it by the sign?
Yeah.
There we go, Galvin. Right, that's fine. We'll open up a little bit.
That way. No, David, just take a step. That way. That's good. That way. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt, for keeping the committee going. It's a thankless job being the chairman. I know that being the chairman twice, so it's a lot of work, but thank you for keeping it organized and staying organized here in Malden. Thanks to everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David and Lisa. The last award, another friend who I've met a couple of years ago. I'm going to try to read my own chicken scratch, yes. Bear with me. Served 2 tours of Iraq with the U.S. Navy, subsequently served with the U.S. State Department as a senior rule of law advisor in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's current the Malden Fire Commissioner, and he was the chairman before me 2 years ago. I'd like to present this award to Emily Haskell.
Hey, I want to thank everybody who haven't had the opportunity to come down here this afternoon and meet with all of you, like-minded people. These are difficult times in this country. I know we are all experiencing a level of discomfort with this insanity. Put that aside for a moment. What's happening in the streets of our cities and our urban centers is terrible, terrible events. The vilification of Republicans, the Republican Party, and our president. And I just think it's very, very important for all of us to stand up and be counted at this point in time to recognize that we're not bad people and we have a great country and we certainly don't want to destroy it. So my message is make it upon yourself to reach out to somebody and make sure they get out the vote as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Before I have the first speaker come on, I'd like to introduce the person who's helped me a lot with everything is our Vice Chair, Kathleen Young, who just came in. Our first speaker of the night is a member of the executive board of this committee. He's currently the secretary of the Republican Party in Malden, and he will get 150 votes September 1st. Mr. Joe Panziotti.
Can you all hear me? Okay, that's great. You're probably wondering why I decided to become a private candidate. And one of the first things that I noticed that really caught my attention is, am I the only one who is sick and tired of incumbents being unopposed? Or why is anybody interested in running? So there are all kinds of reasons that people give, and I can see the validity of some of them. So anyway, I'm one of those people who really thinks that we should have a choice. And the choice should be me. And the choice should be us. So, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm a 77-year-old, well-nourished white guy. And these are actually the clinical terms that we used to use when I was in the Navy as an independent duty hospital foreman. So, oh, and not, by the way, I do have a very lovely wife, 2 children who are in their 40s, and 2 grandchildren. So I take all of this stuff into consideration and say, you know, we really need to have somebody have a voice at the table. And since I know that everybody can hear me, because in my training I've been taught how to project. So anyway, yeah, I'm a well-trained individual, I'm pretty smart, and I comprehend what most people say. But again, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're nowhere. So I would like to have that particular seat, and I need all of you to do your part to make that happen. I often scold people who say, if I'm elected. Well, I don't take that view. I say, when I am elected. Of course, you all realize it's not just I, it's we, okay? Now, occasionally when I meet a candidate, my favorite question to them is, what committee do you want to serve on? Well, of course, I'm the only one who's ever asked them, and they take maybe a little bit of surprise. So I will tell you the committees I want to sit on, and I'll tell you the top three. Okay. For me, it's elder affairs, veteran services, and workforce development. Now, I am interested in everything under the sun. I am affected by attention deficit and that disorder. However, I can point out, for instance, who was sitting where, what they were wearing, what they said, and I can repeat it verbatim, even though I don't have a recorder on. So, watch out what you say and what you wear, because someday I just might have to describe who you were with and why it is that you should remember who I am, because most people don't. But the thing is, I have a capacity to take in an awful lot of information. Sometimes I may forget somebody's name. I always know where I am, by the way. I always know who I am, who the president is. So in psychiatry, that's called oriented times 3. So rather than going on and on further, I'll end by telling you that the first speaker who told us about the president that I'm about limited taxation, limited regulation, and local decisions being made. And that's basic republicanism. Without all this other, what I call minutia, that's what we're about. Low taxes, low regulation, and nobody telling us what we're supposed to do where we live. So, with that having been said, and it's so good to see so many of you again.
Now we're going to be going like this.
There you go.
Before I get to the next speaker, I want to recognize the dignitary in the room, which I should have first. He holds the position I used to hold. He's the current school committee member of Ward 6, Mr. Joe Gray. The next speaker
Did I hear encore? No, never mind. All right.
The next speaker is a gentleman that I have met in April. He's really helped me along with some ideas that we've talked to, and when I became chairman, I tried to set up a chairman-wide district call with all the other chairs of the district. And Dan's been a real big help. He's a former selectman in Reading, multiple terms, and he's currently the chairman of the Reading Republican Party, and he will get 300 votes September 1st to go against Senator Lewis. Mr. Dan Enslinger.
Thank you very much. I'm not exactly a stranger to Malden. I got involved in a race in this district back in 2010. Anybody know Craig Spadafora?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's when the district I tried to help him when we came very close, and who knows, it could happen again. Again, I'm Dan Enslinger. Dan E is probably enough on the ballot because I'm registered with the clerk, and I think they'll accept that. If you have a Republican ballot, under the Senator in General Court, 5th Middlesex, write my name in. 300 votes district-wide, I get on the ballot. So, A little bit about my history here. I actually grew up in New York State, Niagara Falls. Been out here for 42 years, so I'm still a foreigner, you know, in the eyes of the Yankees, I guess. But I'm a Readingite. Kind of worked my way up, first on the planning board, and then I served from 1989 to 1998 on the select board. Took a few years off, came back in 2013, served to 2019. I saw the transformation in the town. It wasn't something I liked. When I first served, we had almost an ecumenical spirit. You know, at the town level, you park your politics at the curb, and you just learn to serve the people. I want to get back to that. We don't have that now. Instead, we actually have extreme liberalism, progressivism being fed down from Lewis to the people running for the select board. He is almost hand-picking those people, and they pushed out a lot of the good folks off that board. There's something funny happened in Reading this year. Did any of you see the news story where all the police walked out of the room? Anybody remember that back in February? Well, it was a selectman named Andrew Friedman who was going to be subject to election in 3 weeks. The then current chair delayed the selection of the police chief for 4 months for no good reason. The room was full of police, and Mr. Friedman said, I feel kind of intimidated. You guys drive around town with your weapons. The whole group got up and left. It was on all the local stations here. Well, I'm proud to say Andy got voted out by a huge coalition. Republican, Democrat, unenrolled. We elected 2 good people, and it started the turnaround in Reading. And I'm hoping to continue that and kind of ride that momentum. And we have a recall election on the 1st also for the female chairman to tell them everything else. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm cautiously optimistic. So where do I differ with Mr. Lewis? I wholeheartedly support the police. I support necessary reforms that only by police involved in the process. Lewis is listening to a lot of far-left people in what he's running. This reform build and shift law that the Senate passed in the dead of night, 4 a.m., that's not good legislation. Right now it's mired in a conference committee. There are 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans on that committee. There's a lot of other bad stuff being talked about in that conference. One is an end run around Prop 2.5. Another is a sinking gas tax. It's called the TCI initiative that the governor is a big fan of, unfortunately. But if we don't have opposition on that ballot, there's a lot of funny stuff that's going to happen between now and the end of the year, because they're staying in second. So how did this come about? Well, we were coming back from my son's house in New Jersey. But, you know, this is right after the stupid Senate voted for in the morning. She said, "Do Lewis have any opposition?" I said, "No, he doesn't." She goes, "Is there a way to do that?" I said, "You'd have to get right in." She goes, "Would you want to do it?" I was looking at this most apolitical member of my family saying I should do this. So I thought about it, I talked to some folks, and here I am. So we're going to give it a go. I have no illusions how difficult this is going to be to win. And I've got a sort of an air war campaign plan, a fast-hitting thing with social media. Unfortunately, I got to do robocalls to introduce myself, but I've got a creative way to do that that I think will work. But I need those 300 signatures, and we'll see what we can do. But the fact that I'm on the ballot, I hope will deter Mr. Lewis and his friends from picking our pockets and doing worse things to our police. So I ask for your support on September 1st and on November 3rd. We'll see what we can do. Thank you, Jerry.
Before I introduce the last speaker of the night, if anybody is interested in helping any of these candidates, whether it's phone calls, handouts, or donations, you can either talk to them or come see me and I'll give you more information. So the last speaker is a gentleman I actually met over Facebook. He is running for U.S. Senate, and we need people like him in the Senate because, you know, you heard all the speakers talk. It's just getting ridiculous with these liberals and how things happen. So I'd like to introduce to you the next U.S. Senator representing Massachusetts, Mr. Kevin O'Connor.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and I am running for United States Senate. When you're running for office, people ask you two main questions. Who are you, and why are you running? And my answer to both questions is pretty much the same. I'm a concerned father of 4 boys. I am a proud American, and I'm a fighter. I am a happy warrior, but I'm a fighter. Why am I concerned? Why are we all concerned? Why are we here? We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, founded on the concept that all men and women are created equal, and that we have an opportunity society. We have equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. No guarantees. What we see today in 2020, which is the logical extension of policies that have been advanced by the other party for some time, what we see now are exactly the opposite values. They want to defund the police, put our community safety at risk, to advance an ideological agenda. They want to open our borders so that rather than take care of American citizens as the American government should do, just as the Guatemalan government should do, just as the Ugandan government should do, just as every government should do for its citizens. Rather than take care of our own citizens, they want to open the doors and provide for people who are not American citizens. And I have no issue with people around the world that want to come to the United States of America. I'm so proud that we're a magnet. But we have to provide for our own. That is the most basic responsibility of the government. So I'm concerned about that. And I'm concerned about an entitlement society. We have a senator who lives in this town who this week proposed that every person in the United States receive COVID relief of $2,000 a month. So every person, not citizen, every person, $2,000 a month dating back to March. So for a family of 4, that's $96,000 a year under the guise of COVID relief. He's proposing it for a country that is $26 trillion in debt, with rapidly accumulating debt. It is so grossly irresponsible as to be laughable, but it's not laughable, it's serious. Because he is the incumbent United States Senator of Massachusetts. He's likely to get reelected, and if he's not reelected, it's because his opponent in the Democratic primary will outflank him to the left. They're promising everything, and they're not offering any way to pay for it, and they're not offering the most basic foundational elements of success. Safety. All organized activity begins with safety. The promotion of hard work, investment, and initiative. So that's why I'm concerned. In terms of being a father of 4, I have 4 kids. My oldest is 26. I got 2 out of college. And I have a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old. So I have kids who are in the schools right now. I'm seeing the effects of children having to learn remotely instead of in person, and I'll tell you what, it's not the same thing. You see, I see my 9-year-old, I'm not going to get into specifics about children, but every child has individual challenges. For some kids it's reading, for some kids it's math and writing, or it's athletics. But I can guarantee you that a 3rd grader has breakthrough moments, and they need the continuity to push through and to build upon that. And that's being taken away from our children. And the children who will be most hurt by that deprivation are the kids who are most disadvantaged. I live in a suburb where people are organizing learning pods while the schools are shut down. There are workarounds for the haves. For the have-nots, there will be academic deprivation, and that academic deprivation will have consequences for decades. And that deprivation, will have economic consequences, and it's not right. fighter. So the second of 6 kids, Jack and Peggy O'Connor. And that's a really defining aspect of who I am as a person. My father was born in 1933 during the Depression. He grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, the oldest of 4 kids. My mom also grew up in Queens. My father experienced all the maladies of the Depression, all the maladies that you experience when jobs are shut down, jobs are lost, people are anxious, people are hurting. He had a job from 3rd grade on. Every penny that he earned went to his parents and his family to support his family. He went to college, he paid his own way, slept on the living room couch all through college. He went into the Marine Corps, journalism school, married my mom, and together they raised 6 kids. My mom was a teacher, and then a stay-at-home mom. And then when the 6 kids were going to college, my mom had to go back to work and try to put the kids through school. And my mom started out doing insurance sales at night. And she was unsuccessful. It was really hard. It was cold calls, basically, to try to put her kids through school. Cold calls. And it didn't go well. I saw the disappointment on her face every day that she came home. She then switched careers, became a real estate broker, and she was really good at it. And she went on and had a good career. Together, my parents, with their 6 kids working jobs from age 12 on every day. I was a dishwasher, I was a busboy, we worked every summer, every day after school, we were playing sports. What was promoted in our household was hard work. I eventually went to law school. I went to Boston College Law School, and I've been a trial lawyer for 30 years. I represent businesses in court cases. Louder? Well, I'm apparently not loud enough.
Not over here. Come on.
I really. So I have been a trial lawyer for businesses for the last 30 years. I represent family-owned businesses, technology companies. I've had the privilege of representing big companies, small companies, individuals. And I've had the privilege of representing tenants against landlords on a pro bono basis. I had a case on behalf of a wrongfully convicted man who spent 20 years in jail for crimes that he did not commit. I have seen the might and the weight of the government bearing down upon citizens, and I fought back. And I have seen the power of the law when it's applied, when due process is applied, when equal protection is applied. I've seen the power of the law to bring people together and to do justice. And that's my vision for our future unity, is equal justice, equal application of the law, fair opportunity for every American. And my platform, pretty simple. I want to thank the Democratic Party for making our platform so simple. My colleague here, Blake Comrie, who started as my intern, and we hired him very fast because he was so good, said our slogan, this was in our ride here today, that our slogan should be results, not resistance. So what we've seen from our incumbent U.S. Senator for the last 4 years is resistance. His preoccupation has been resisting something rather than delivering for us and for our communities. What a waste. What a waste of opportunity. I promise you what I will deliver is results. I will work with anyone in either party, anytime, if it will advance our community's interests. And I will support the police. I will defend, not defund the police. I will promote jobs, making sure that our taxes, our regulation, our incentives are all aligned to promote the initiative that has made the American economy the envy of the world. And I will always promote the rights and freedoms of the individual. And that's a fundamental difference between our party and the other side. Our party believes that we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. And those rights are superior to anything that the government has. The government exists around us. It is to support us. It is not to rule over us. And what you're seeing from the Democrats, from Ed Markey and Joe Kennedy and the Massachusetts delegation that has been the champions of Venezuela and other socialist countries, for them, neither of them has worked a day in the private sector of his adult life and in government. For them, the government is the center of the universe. That's absolutely wrong. We have to reverse that. We will reverse that. People come to America from all around the world because they don't want that. Because they know we are endowed by our Creator. And even if you don't believe in God, you know that that's the better way. That the individual, the power of the individual, the power of our collective decisions is the force for good that can create a brighter future for all the children. Amen.
And your website is?
KOCforsenate.com. Please help me. I have a primary on September 1st.
Okay, yeah.
We can win this primary. I need your help. I need you to like us on social media. Please donate. This costs money. Any donation in any amount will be fuel for our fire. And I guarantee you, in terms of the election of November, we can win this thing. We are the party of common sense. We are offering pragmatism over extremism. And the people of Massachusetts are smart. They'll understand what's going on. And they're going to go for us. Amen.
If anybody wants to take pictures with the sign.
There we go, right here, gentlemen. Look at here, that's it. You want to put Jerry, you want to get the committee before we get going here? Your offices?
Yes, Kathy, you want to get a picture? Joe?
This we does. Step right up, don't be bashful. Come on, come on. It's not a waste of film. They don't have film anymore.
Correct.
There we go.
All right, how many?
The white senator.
There we go. You got more? All right. Is that everybody we're gonna have? All right.
Oh, it's turn a little.
There we go.
The wide lens control.
All right, guys, looking right over here, please. Thank you.
All right. Good luck. Thank you so much.
All right, break this up.
The food's about to be served, so